There was a lonely girl who took a monkey and made it her pet, naming it Dolly. She would talk to it and keep it company, considering it her friend. But one day, the monkey did something strange, and after a few months, a fetus started growing in her belly. The people in the village laughed and mocked her, spreading all sorts of rumors. But she had no answer, for she had never been with a man. Was it really the monkey's child? To find out the secret, listen to the full story. Please subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell to stay updated on all our new stories. This tale comes from a quiet and mysterious village where every shadow hides a secret, and there is no noise from the city nor haste in its rhythms. The village is embraced by the calmness of nature. On the edge of this village stood a small cottage where a girl named Manahil lived. She was a simple, quiet, and lonely girl who had nothing in the world but a grapevine. Manahil was used to being alone. She had no friends, no relatives, no one to keep her company. Every morning, before the sun rose, she would head to the vineyard, pluck grapes with her delicate hands, and take them to the market to sell. There was little known about Manahil in the village except for one thing. She was the girl who sold sweet grapes, always alone. But her grapes were deliciously sweet. One morning, as Manahil was picking grapes as usual, with the sun's rays gently streaming between the vines and birds chirping around her, she was lost in her thoughts. Her face showed a trace of exhaustion, and her silence seemed to carry a deep secret. Suddenly, her eyes fell upon a monkey. But this monkey was unlike any other. It wasn't mischievous or loud. Instead, it sat quietly, watching her with eyes that shone with a strange innocence. She froze in shock and shouted, "Get away, monkey!" But the monkey didn't move. Its eyes held no fear, only a deep sadness. She stepped toward it, hesitant, and the closer she got, the more her courage waned. The monkey didn't move, only lowered its head. The silence stretched for a moment, then she whispered, "All right, but don't cause any harm." That day, the monkey didn't run away. It sat in a corner of the vineyard, and Manahil continued her work. The next day, when she returned, she found the monkey still there in the same spot. Surprised, she nodded at it. The monkey nodded back. A faint smile spread across her lips, and she placed a handful of grapes in front of it. The monkey took the grapes gently and ate them. Days passed, and every day Manahil would come, and the monkey would be there. It didn't cause any trouble. In fact, it helped her pick the grapes, throwing them down to her from the vines. Sometimes it extended its hand as if expecting its daily reward. Manahil became attached to the monkey. She began talking to it as though it could understand her. "I wish my mother were here. She was calm like you." The monkey would listen, respond with its eyes, sometimes nodding its head, other times exhaling deeply. Manahil began to find peace in its company. Weeks went by, and one day, as Manahil was running toward her cottage, she turned around and saw the monkey still sitting under the rain, all alone. Her heart tightened. She rushed back to it and asked, "Why?" There was something in its eyes, a hidden secret. She took its hand and led it to a quiet corner, where she could tell it her stories. From that day on, she called it Dolly. "Come, food is ready, Dolly. Let's go to the market to sell the grapes. We have work to do." She invited the monkey into her home and contentedly settled into her world. The earthy dawn light dimmed, and Dolly sat quietly in a corner, watching her with eyes full of unsaid things. Autumn arrived, and with it came a drop in the sun's warmth. The yellow leaves fell, and the grape harvest came to an end. Manahil became weaker and weaker. Her face paled, and her innocent smile faded. She thought it was just fatigue, but then she caught a cold, developed a fever, and had to stay in bed. Dolly sat by her side day and night, pressing a wet cloth to her forehead, bringing her water, and sometimes stealing fruit from the market. Her breathing calmed, but she felt peace, knowing Dolly was there. One evening, as the clouds gathered, she turned to him and said, weakly, "If it weren't for you, Dolly, I would have been lost long ago." He took her hands in his, as if he wanted to say something, but kept it hidden. Days passed, and her health began to improve slowly. She went back to her usual habits, cleaning the cottage, visiting the vineyard, and sitting with Dolly to talk for hours. One moonlit night, she sat on the mat, gazing at the sky, and then embraced Dolly, whispering, "You've changed my life, Dolly. Don't ever leave. Promise me that." Dolly stretched his hand to her cheek, his eyes speaking of something else. She fell asleep quickly, and her sleep was deep that night. In the dead of night, silence reigned, the winds died down, and the light from the lamp grew faint. Manahil slept soundly, unaware of what was happening. Dolly's movements grew more human-like. He placed his hand on her forehead, and then did something she never felt. When the sun rose, Manahil woke up feeling exhausted and noticing something strange, though she didn't pay it much attention. Her heart was at ease because Dolly was near her. Months passed, and time crawled by, bringing with it a buried secret. Manahil began to feel strange changes in her body, morning sickness, weakness, tightness in her chest. She thought the illness had returned until one day she suddenly fainted. The village's old healer was summoned. He examined her pulse and studied her condition for a long time. Finally, he said a sentence that shook her world. "You are going to be a mother." Manahil stared at herself in the mirror for hours, her hands touching her belly again and again, tears in her eyes, a wound in her heart, and one question screaming in her mind, whose child is this? She suspected everyone, but then her eyes fell on Dolly. He sat in front of her, looking at her with those innocent, silent eyes. His features still carried that faithful look, but for the first time, Manahil saw something in his eyes, something hidden. He lowered his head. In that moment, Manahil felt as though her heart was being torn apart. She screamed, "Get out of my house!" Now! Dolly moved closer, but inside, Manahil was broken. Some laughed, others watched silently. But Dolly no longer sat among the trees. Now he sat at the door, a silent witness to her sorrow. A sorrow that didn't wound the body but weighed heavily on the soul. And Manahil's soul grew heavier day by day. When Manahil, now pregnant in her 4th month, walked through the alleys of the village, the people would gossip, laugh, and point at her. Those eyes, which once bought her sweet grapes, now judged her, accusing her of dishonor. One day, at the village square, some women gathered and spoke in hushed tones. "Did you hear? Manahil, the grape seller, is going to be a mother? What a disgrace. No marriage, no man. Is this a village or a city?" She must have been involved with one of the customers. Another woman laughed. "And what customer?" She was always alone. Maybe it was a jinn or a shadow. And they all laughed again. Some of the men shouted openly, "Manahil, tell us who the father of this child is. We want to know. We'll buy your grapes and take the free offer too." Those words struck her like arrows, piercing her heart. She closed the door of her cottage, but the insult still seemed to break through the walls. She stood before the mirror, touching her swollen belly, asking herself, "Am I wrong? Am I really corrupt? Do I no longer deserve dignity?" She searched for answers, but found only silence. Often she sat alone in the corner of her cottage at night, staring at the door where Dolly used to sit every day. He no longer leapt or played, nor surrounded her as he once had. Now he sat with his head lowered, silent. When she looked at him, an internal storm would rage in her heart. One day, she mustered the courage to ask him at the door, "Did I do something wrong? Should I have never done what I did?" He said nothing. He slowly closed his eyes and lowered his head. That was enough. Her inner volcano erupted. "Get out! Get out of my life! You've ruined me! You've defiled my honor!" Dolly withdrew silently and sat in a corner of the yard. She threw water at him, hit him with a stick, and forced him out of the cottage. But he returned the next day, and the day after, and every day after that, sitting at the door while she screamed at him without opening it. Even at the village meetings, her name was brought up. The elder, the mayor, and the prominent men gathered and discussed her case. "This girl brings shame to our village. No known father, she must be expelled. They sent her a warning. If she didn't reveal the name of the father, she would be banished from the village. But Manahil remained silent. Only a few women visited her out of either pity or curiosity. One of them said, "If you could name the father, at least it would seem right in your eyes." "I can't lie," Manahil replied. "I don't know. I only know that what happened was beyond my control." As for Dolly, he lived in silent agony. He ate no food and drank no water. He simply sat in front of the cottage. His hair began to fall out, his eyes grew hollow, and he became a ghost of his former self. Occasionally, he would lift his gaze to her as if asking for forgiveness. Manahil's heart also carried pain, but she didn't understand. Did I fall in love with an animal, or was I deceived? As the days passed, Manahil's hopes withered. She thought, if only my father were here. But the truth was, a new life was growing inside her, while the world outside called her disgraceful. One evening, a strange old man arrived in the village. He was a dignified man with a calm demeanor, his face carrying the marks of wisdom. The old man went directly to Manahil's cottage and said, "My daughter, I have something that could change your fate." Manahil was confused, but the man spoke gently. "The creature you lived with wasn't just an animal. It was a cursed man." Manahil's eyes widened in shock. She thought this was just the beginning of another rumor. "What are you saying?" The man continued, "Many years ago, a reckless prince broke the heart of a witch in the forest. She cursed him, turning him into a monkey, and swore he would never return to human form until a woman formed a genuine connection with him. And you, Manahil, were that woman." Manahil felt the weight of his words like an earthquake in her heart. So that night wasn't just a chance encounter. It was part of breaking a curse. The man nodded. He wasn't a criminal, he was cursed. And perhaps he really did love you. That's why he kept coming back to you every day. Manahil's breath quickened. She rushed to the door, opened it, and looked toward the spot where Dolly used to sit. But Dolly was not there. Instead, a handsome young man stood before her, dressed in white, his face pure and eyes full of tears. "Manahil, it's me, the one you called Dolly. I am the one you sheltered in your home and in your heart. I was a man, and your love and touch freed me from the curse." Manahil froze. She could only speak in broken words. You destroyed my honor, and now you say you love me?" The young man fell to his knees. "I know I hurt you, but it was not by my choice. I was just searching for a way to live. You were the only one who gave me love, even though you thought I was just an animal. Now that I've returned to my human form, I don't want to lose you." The next morning, the village was filled with astonishment when they saw a strange young man standing at Manahil's door. And there was Manahil, who they had mocked yesterday, now standing proudly by his side. All voices fell silent. The old man stood before the village and said, "He was never a monkey, but a man. And you all wronged Manahil, thinking she was guilty, while she was the light in the fate of another man." The women in the village felt embarrassed, and the men lowered their heads. Manahil looked at them with a glance and said, "You all wronged me, but I don't seek revenge from anyone because my love has returned to me." The young man, now named Asem, signed the marriage contract, and the villagers who had once mocked her now offered their blessings. After the ceremony, Asem took her hand and said, "You gave me freedom, and now I give you life." Manahil's eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't tears of pain but of joy. Months later, Manahil gave birth to a beautiful child. For the first time in the history of the village, a child born to a mother symbolized the bond between love, sacrifice, and forgiveness. Asem worked every day in the grape orchards, with Manahil by his side. The cottage remained the same, but no longer was it filled with silence. It was now filled with love. As the sun set, casting its orange rays on the grapevines, Asem sat with Manahil and their child. He said quietly, "You freed me from loneliness and freed me from the curse. Now we will stay together forever." Manahil took his hand and smiled.